Welcome to meeting number 60 of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room as well as remotely using Zoom. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of the members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those that are participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please do mute yourselves when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom is at the bottom of your screen, and you have a choice of either Flora, English, or French. For those in the room, on the other hand, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Pursuant to the order of reference of Wednesday, November 16, 2022, the committee now resumes consideration of Bill C-281, an act to amend the Department of Foreign Affairs Trade and Development Act, the Justice for Victims and Corrupt Foreign Officials Act, the Broadcasting Act, and the Prohibiting Cluster Munitions Act. It is now my pleasure to once again welcome officials who are here to support us as we consider clause by clause for Bill C-281. From the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, we're grateful to once again have Ms. Ashlyn Milligan, Deputy Director, Non-Proliferation and Disarmament. We also have Ms. Jennifer Keeling, Acting Executive Director, Human Rights and Indigenous Affairs. From the Department of Canadian Heritage, we're grateful to once again have Ms. Amy Awad, the Senior Director, Marketplace and Legislative Policy. And finally, from the Department of National Defense, we have Major General Paul Prévost, Director of Staff, Strategic Joint Staff, who is kindly and graciously joining us via Zoom. So I will now open the floor in relation to Sub-Amendment G2, which was under consideration when we last adjourned debate on Thursday, April 20th, 2023. So we're starting with G2.
Yeah, just point of order, Chair. My understanding was that there was unanimous consent to withdraw the sub-amendment and the amendment, and that the government has an alternative amendment to propose.
And we would agree to that, yes, to work at having both sub-amendment and amendment withdrawn, and then presenting a new amendment.
Is there unanimous consent to that from every member? Excellent. Happy to hear. Okay, so both are withdrawn. Yes, Mr. Zuberi.
I would like to move G2.1.
G2.1, yes, please. We're dealing with the same text that we were dealing with last time. It relates to the Broadcasting Act, amended by adding the following under subsection 22(1), a restriction to the broadcasting undertaking subject to influence. There would be a deletion of the word amend in the first line, an insertion after foreign programming that is hyphen. The insertion is despite any measure that the Commission could take under this part, hyphen. It continues with the original text, vulnerable to being adding, significantly influenced. The term significantly is added. The rest of the text remains intact. In terms of motivating this, there are a number of points that are important. One is that the language removes the term amend, which is actually a salutary piece of language, because it allows for the problem to be rectified through an amendment to the actual document in question, and therefore the problem would be solved. Two is that with respect to the renewal of or the issuance of the license,
the CRTC has other supervisory regulatory powers, and the insertion, despite any measure that the Commission could take under this part, would acknowledge that the CRTC already has embedded in it some measures that allow for the problem that we're addressing here to be solved. So it simply acknowledges that there are internal mechanisms. Third, the term significantly is an important addition to the text that's already there, because the influence that we are looking at when it comes to influence, it should be significant, and we need to have a measure around this, and not have a minor influence being the threshold. There should be a significant influence that is a threshold with respect to this act. This doesn't take away from anything Mr. Lawrence is putting forth. This simply tightens up a little bit and makes it clearer. And it keeps this full spirit of what Mr. Lawrence is bringing forth with respect to legislation in this particular section.
Thank you very much. Before going to Mr. Jennis, just wanted to ask for the benefit of all members whether the chapeau in G2 remains. And by the chapeau, I mean the first section, which reads that Bill C-281 in Clause 4 be amended by replacing lines 3 to 14 on pages 3 with the following. Is that part of your amendment? Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. Yes, we now just go to Mr. Jennis, please.
Okay, so maybe just a clarification from the clerk that my understanding of the amendment is the same as because we're kind of just working on the fly a little bit here. Although certain other language is removed and replaced, my understanding of the effective change that this amendment would make is only to remove the word amended from the existing section where it says no license shall be issued or renewed, to add in the words despite any measure that the Commission could take under this part, and to add in the word significantly before influence. There are no other additions or removals in terms of the effect of the amendment. Is that correct from the clerk's understanding?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my understanding as well. That is my understanding as well.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so directionally we're broadly comfortable with this. I would just propose one sub-amendment. That is, I would replace the word significantly with the word meaningfully, which is, I think, a somewhat lower standard than significantly, but a higher standard than simply influenced by. We don't want the influence to be trivial or tangential, but I think the standard for influence could be something less than significant. If you have someone who is involved in genocide who is able to meaningfully influence broadcasting, I think that is enough of a standard. So I would propose that that small wording change as a sub-amendment. Hopefully we can get to a good result.
Yes, Mr. Brunel.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. It's just that in the translation, what I have here in French before me, that they will replace the word significantly by meaningfully, but I need to know what that means in French, the French translation of that. Can someone help me out here?
Mr. Jennings?
Yeah, I was trying to get help from Google Translate, but unfortunately, the Google translation of meaningfully in French is significativement. So, do we have I don't know? Is there a linguist on the officials panel or something who can help us out with this? I mean, in English, clearly there is what I'm trying to arrive at is significant. Implies a level of influence that is almost domineering in the outcome, whereas meaningful implies an impact that is more than trivial and less than domineering. But maybe Mr. Brunel Duceppe can suggest the appropriate French.
Non, en fait,
No, my point is this. If you can follow me in French, perhaps you want to debate the meaning of the word in English, but in French, the sub-amendment, it doesn't change anything at all in the French. It's a synonym. They're just synonyms. Significantly and meaningfully are synonyms. Are you following my thought?
Thank you, Mr. Brunel Duceppe. Mr. Oliphant?
Je pense que c'est exact.
I think that it really is exactly the same thing in English. It's something that is subjective, not absolute. But I'd ask our officials if they feel there is any difference in interpretation of the two terms. Perhaps they could answer, is there a difference between meaningful and significantly for the implementation of this legislation?
First of all, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question.
Don't recognize it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So we don't have a decisive answer on this question. The meaning is essentially that it will translate to the same word in French, and meaningfully is used in both meaningfully and significantly are used in different places. But we haven't had time to do an analysis of if there's a notable difference in the meaning. I'm sorry, we couldn't be more helpful.
Just maybe a point of order. Based on the feedback from my colleagues, this isn't necessarily a hill we want to die on. So if there's consensus, maybe we'll deem the sub-amendment withdrawn and the amendment adopted.
Is there unanimous consent to withdrawal of the amendment? Okay. So reverting back to the amendment,
I also said they'd have the amendment adopted. So if we're
unanimous consent to that? It carries? Okay, great. So we now go to Clause 5. No? Oh, yes. So it carries as amended. Is that correct? Everyone's... What? It was amended. Shall Clause 4 carry as amended? Thank you. Thank you. So we now go to Clause 5. Yes, NDP 3.
All right, so NDP 3 is, it's on page 3. We are going to be adding the following on, replacing line 18 on page 3 of the following. Commitments under the convention, particularly its obligations under Article 5, victim assistance, and Article 6, international cooperation assistance of the convention, and to restrict ments. This just talks a little bit more about the need for international cooperation and humanitarian assistance. It emphasizes the positive obligations that Canada has with regards to being a state party to the convention. It's an easy one. I think we should all just accept it.
Thank you for that, Ms. McPherson. I should note and highlight for all the members that if NDP 3 is adopted, G3 cannot be moved due to a line conflict, since any given line can only be amended once.
I accept that ruling, though I'm not sure it's exactly correct, because I don't think that the words are not the same that are being changed. The line, yes, but not the words. However, what I'd like to know is, can NDP 3 be sub-amended because I didn't know that ruling would happen, I just have to work for a minute on trying to figure out how to get we're broadly supportive of NDP 3, but would like to massage it a little bit with G3. And I'm just trying to figure out how to do that.
Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Just while Mr. Oliphant reads his notes, maybe I could just talk for a second here. I'm hoping the massage is not going to include financial assistance, because the financial assistance is an undefined term. It's not in the prohibiting of Cluster Munitions Act. Prohibition of Cluster Munitions Act. It's not a economically defined term, and it's way too broad. So I'm hoping it's not going to include that, because Conservatives will not support that.
I hate to do this. I would like to suspend the meeting for a couple of minutes while we sort out how we can sub-amend NDP 3 to make it if G, as I said, if G, whatever it is, 3 is not allowed, then I'm looking for a way to amend it by inserting a few words.
So would 5 minutes
Yes,
suffice?
thank you.
Okay, we'll suspend for 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm not sure if I have the floor or not.
So it now having been 5 minutes, I think we can resume. But prior to resuming, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we are very, very privileged to have in the back of the room today a number of grade 12 students from who are taking a course in Canada and International Politics class at Haverhill. So thank you for being here. and thank you for taking an interest in our democratic processes. And you will note that everyone here is very compromising, and we continuously collaborate. But great to see you all here. So on that note, I will go to Mr. Oliphant. The floor is yours.
I'm just worried they're going to think they did something wrong and are being punished to be sent to committee. So we are in support of the NDP 3 amendment to Clause 5 with the insertion of 6 more words, and that is under in the last sentence where it begins of the convention, comma, prohibit the provision of financial assistance and to restrict investment and continuing on. So not only restricting investment, but providing financial assistance in the pursuit of that.
Good to hear you're in favor of your own amendment, Mr. Oliphant.
No, I was in favor of their amendment.
That is what you stated. But yes, I will go to Mr. Brunel Duceppe.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Since nobody from the Liberals came to see me during the 5 minutes, I'd like to have a French version.
Il y a une version en français.
Oh, thanks.
C'est exactement la même chose.
It's exactly the same thing as in G3. It introduces, it's in the package that you have for G3.
C'est une addition.
It is an addition of a few words from G3 which are added to NDP 3. So in French, it would be a reference to l'octroi d'une aide financière.
C'est bon, Monsieur Brunel.
Is that all right with you, Mr. Brunel Duceppe?
Is there unanimous consent for this amendment? Yes.
Just pause for a second.
Sorry, yes.
Can you just pause for a second?
Absolutely. The legislative assistant for a pause. Clerk has rightly pointed out that there were a couple of terms that were not included in the French version. So I will give the floor to the legislative clerk if he could kindly read us the French version of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Monsieur Duceppe.
Mr. Duceppe, it would read, that's to say Mr. Brunel Duceppe, it would read in the very last line in French, but I can read it completely in French if you like, and he is reading the French version. which in English is commitments under the convention, particularly its obligations under Article 5, and so on. In French, the comma, it would read in French vise à interdire and vise à restreindre, il a dit. Well, it's very clear that this takes a bit of time.
To the legislative clerk for filling in the gaps. So now, is there unanimous consent to this amendment? Yes, unanimous consent? That's what I said. Yeah? I said. Oh, did I? My apologies. Thank you. To the sub-amendment. So there is unanimous consent to that. So now we go to the amendment itself. So is there unanimous consent for the amendment? As amended. Yes. So shall clause 5 carry as amended? Yes, unanimous consent?
Just a sec, Chair. So there aren't, oh, right, but we, just pause for a second here.
Sorry, just 1 second.
That's the only, but the subsequent amendments from the government are to clause 6. So we're.
Clause 6, yeah.
Yes.
And
Correct.
Clause 5 can carry, yes, sorry about that.
Yes, so clause 5 carries as amended. Thank you. So we now move to clause 6. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Point of order. We have, I just want to make sure that we don't miss this, but we do have a amendment to, after line 11 on page 4 to clause 6 to 6.1. Is that, I don't believe that's in the package. That's a
I
late.
don't believe so.
Yeah, we.
Let me
this-
just check.
this- We're just going to put this one on the record now, so I just want to go past it, so.
So do we deal with it first, or do we deal with G4 first?
Yeah.
2 minutes?
Just-
Okay, we need 2 minutes. We will adjourn, suspend for 2 minutes. Sorry.
It's fine.
Is 30 seconds to 12 o'clock noon. and the fact that I've been informed that the Ukrainian ambassador is waiting, we will now adjourn. But prior to that, allow me once again to thank our officials for having been here with us as we go through clause by clause, and also the legislative clerk for having assisted us in this endeavor. We will just adjourn for a couple of minutes, suspend for a couple of minutes, just to allow the officials to leave. Those who are on Zoom can remain connected for the upcoming session. Welcome back, members. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, January 31st, 2022, the committee resumes its study of the situation at the Russia-Ukraine border and implications for peace and security. It is now my great pleasure and honor to welcome back to our committee Her Excellency Madam Kovalev, the Ambassador of Ukraine to Canada. Madam Ambassador, thank you for joining us once again today. You have 6 minutes for your opening remarks, and the floor is yours.
Dear Mr. Chair, honorable members of the Parliament, thank you for the opportunity to address to you today. In August, when I was addressing the committee, we were discussing energy security as winter was approaching. And there were a lot of concerns on how we all in Europe, not just in Ukraine, will go through the winter. And this was really a very hard winter for Ukraine. From 10th of October, Russia carried over 33 massive missile and drone attacks on energy infrastructure, with about 70% of them Ukrainian intercepted. Blackouts, massive destruction of electricity grids, days without power, gas, and heating during the cold winter. The deadliest airstrikes, including on the residential buildings in Dnipro, Kyiv, and Zaporizhia. Over $411 billion of damage assessed by the World Bank. But now it's spring, and we are extremely grateful for the robust support of Canadian Parliament, government, and people of Canada. We appreciate the strong cross-partisan stance in the Parliament supporting Ukraine through this barbaric war. And Canada's support has made a difference. $450 million Canadian dollars helped the government of Ukraine to procure gas and supply heating to Ukrainian families. Another $115 million Canadian dollars donated to World Bank helped us to rebuild damaged electricity grids and supply power. $5 billion loans to Ukrainian government helped us to finance the pensions, social support for IDPs and other vulnerable people. Demining equipment donated by Canada is helping to clear our streets and agri fields from Russian mines. Support with other partners, the Grain from Ukraine initiative secured over 170 million tons of thousand tons of Ukrainian grain delivered to countries in the global south. NASAMS are among the most advanced air defense systems in the world, and Canada committed to supply this to Ukraine to protect our cities and to protect life of the people. And we are grateful to the members of the committee for your steadfast support of Ukraine during the more than a year of the full-scale invasion, for your political support and adoption of the motion to name the crimes committed by Russia as a genocide against Ukrainian people, to call to designate Wagner Group as a terrorist organization, your recommendations in the report, and your political standing in different arenas, including the international one. Crime of aggression, war crimes, and genocide, all these horrific crimes require justice. And Ukraine law enforcement agencies investigating over 80,000 war crimes, including killing of 10,100 civilians, among them 470 children. More than 19,500 Ukrainian children were illegally deported to Russia, and unfortunately only 328 of them were returned home. According to their evidence, they were forced to learn Russian language, Russian revised history, and many were filmed for Russian propaganda campaigns. Justice for these crimes is not only necessary for families who lost their beloved ones, but also it will serve the critical interest of global justice to prevent the future crimes and any other dictators like Putin to commit them again. So we are grateful to Canada for the important contribution to ICC in investigating the war crimes, including those against women and children. And the global arrest warrant of Putin and his so-called Commissioner for Children's Rights, issued by ICC, is the first important step on our way to justice. We value Canada's participation in the core group that is working on the establishment of a special international tribunal of the crime of aggression, that is aimed to bring Putin and his close circle to accountability. Russia has already strategically failed in Ukraine. It failed to take control over Kyiv, as they assumed in the first weeks of the war. It failed to break morale of Ukrainians during their attacks on the critical infrastructure, depriving us from heat and electricity. It failed with any attempts of their offensive operations. This year, it failed to break unity among the partners. And on the contrary, with Finland's accession to NATO and Sweden on the way, Russian invasion strengthened Euro-Atlantic alliance. It will be even more stronger with Ukraine joining NATO. And we expect Canada's strong stance welcoming Ukraine's application to NATO. And Vilnius summit will be an important platform for this very needed decision of the alliance. Russia also failed to break Ukraine's spirit. 95% of Ukrainians believe in the victory on the battlefield, according to recent polls. 87% support Ukraine joining NATO and 87% joining EU. The sanctions imposed on Russia are working and depriving Russia not only from the money to wage the war, but also deprive them from the possibility to produce weapons on a large scale. So we must increase sanction pressure, including those on nuclear sector. We need to keep strict control and prevent sanction circumventions. And third, the frozen Russian foreign money and money of Russian sanctioned oligarchs need to be seized. REPO, which is the special working group on the sanctions, already blocked 58 billion worth of Russian sanctioned assets. And next steps need to be done. On the military side, the heaviest fights are today around Bakhmut. Since January, Russia has been taking enormous losses in force and heavy weapons in their attempts to capture the town. The city of 70,000 people is almost completely destroyed by Russian bombs and artillery. It is literally a pile of rubble, but we are holding and we are fighting. Russia constantly is attacking by air. That's why we crucially need the air defense system and the fighter jets to protect the whole territory of Ukraine. As of today, the length of active front line is 1,300 kilometers. That's roughly like Canada-US border of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba combined. Our brave men and women on the front line continue to fight, including those 35,000 that have been trained with the Unifier program. And I would like to thank you all Canadian instructors for their dedication and training Ukrainian forces. I would also like to thank you for the contribution to the military support that Ukraine is receiving from all of the allies. Canadian Leopard tanks, armored vehicles, artillery shells, drones, and many more. This is important investment in our victory and also in Euro-Atlantic security. And further counteroffensive operation will be successful with well-equipped Ukrainian forces backed by tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, ammunition, air defense, and fighter jets. And the multi-year program of the military support for Ukraine will help to ramp up the defense production and secure needed military equipment, both in Canada and among all our other allies. And on a final note, I would like also to comment on another front where Russia is trying to tackle our unity, and that is disinformation. Unlike tanks, guns, and missiles, this massive weapon is not always clearly seen. Russia disinformation campaigns are not only focused on propaganda and undermining the support of Ukraine, but it also challenging institutions, basic values, and democracy itself. More often, it's simply to sow dissension, to get people divided. Because when allies are divided, it is tougher for them to forge a common resolve against the external threat. And now it's more than important to recognize those threats and to address them. Honorable members of parliament, Ukraine is grateful for your leadership, your voice, and your efforts to stand against the horror of a Russian full-scale invasion and all the horror it brought to our country. We value your steadfast and cross-partisan support of Ukraine, fighting for our freedom and for democracy. We cannot promote our joint values together better today than defending them together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We will now go to the members for questions. For the first round of questions, we have 5 minutes. So, we start with Mr. Jenis. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellency, thank you for being here. Ukraine is not just fighting for itself, it is on the front lines of a fight for the security of the entire free world. So I want to thank you and all the people of Ukraine for your heroic courage in this fight. We must be with you for as long as it takes. I also want to recognize, as you did, the fact that the last time you were here, we were discussing the issue of the Gazprom turbine waiver, and you encouraged us to revoke that waiver, and members of all 3 opposition parties sought to put pressure on the government, and the government did eventually reverse course on that. So thank you for the role you played in that process, and I think it shows that a strong parliamentary democracy where opposition parties can use the tools we have to put pressure on the government to make actions match rhetoric is certainly very important. I've got a number of themes I want to hammer through as quickly as I can, and the first is, could you provide us with some specific information on Ukraine's military hardware needs and what Canada could be doing more of in terms of supplying critically needed military hardware?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And in terms of the military support, there are actually the 5-6 priorities that Canada has already stepped in, but the reality on the battlefield is that we need more. So we value Canada joining the tank coalition and the Leopard tanks that have been already delivered to Europe and hope soon in Ukraine. It's important, but also we need artillery. Artillery is something that will be definitely needed for the counteroffensive operation as Russia still prevails in the ability to fight. The second thing is the air defense. Since the very first day of this full-scale invasion, Russia has dominance in the air. You remember the first message of Ukraine was close the sky. We understand now that the reality to close the sky is to help us with the air defense, and Ukraine is looking for the NATO standard fighter jets. That is important to protect the cities, to protect the infrastructure. We saw and we went through the hard winter with massive missile attacks throughout all of the country, and that is armored vehicles, and that is the tanks. I would put this as the main priorities. But also I would like to stress that what is now happening with our NATO partners and including the planning for the long term, because the defense stock with many of the countries is running out, and to ramp up the defense production both to increase those security challenges to our partners and also being able to help Ukraine, it requires more mid and long-term planning. So the long-term programs of support, and as a consequence, also ramping up the defense sector and defense production, which creates also more jobs in the countries. That is very important as we look on it strategically.
Thank you. The next question I wanted to ask is about the impact of some of the comments the President of France is making. I've been quite concerned about those, especially his comments on China and Taiwan. The unity of Western nations has been critical in the last 18 months, and we should stand together in defense of the international rules-based order instead of seeing attempts to cut side deals. Our view is that Ukraine must achieve victory on its own terms, that allies must support Ukraine for as long as necessary, and that any negotiations with the potential for concessions by Ukraine should be up to the Ukrainian people through their democratic representatives to deliberate and decide on without external pressure. I also see asking Xi Jinping to help make peace between Russia and Ukraine as making about as much sense as it would have made to ask Hirohito to negotiate the future of Alsace-Lorraine. But I wonder if you could make any comments, or if you have any comments to make about what Macron has been talking about in terms of China, and then also about other feelers or proposals regarding peace negotiations from other Western European states.
Madam Ambassador, you have approximately 30 seconds.
Ukraine seeks peace, but Ukraine seeks the real peace. And Ukraine developed and presented the peace formula, President Zelensky, that has the 10 points, and crucial of them is the restoration of Ukrainian borders, bringing justice. And we are grateful for 141 states that voted for that UN resolution, supporting these basic principles of the President Zelensky peace formula. And we value all of our partners who approach and support this formula, including all the European countries. And so this is the framework for the future peace.
Thank you very much, and I agree completely.
Thank you. We now move to MP Zuberi. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, for being here today and coming to our committee again. We are all together steadfast in support of the Ukrainian people and your country to defend against this illegal Russian aggression, this illegal war. I wanted to touch briefly upon the status of refugees in your homeland of Ukraine. And we in Canada have welcomed 209,000 Ukrainians here who are seeking refuge. And this has been supported by the 1.4 million Canadians of Ukrainian heritage. Can you speak a bit about how Canada is actually helping to resettle Ukrainians as you have seen this happen, and how other European partners are also involved in that?
Thank you. Unfortunately, the war forced a lot of people, and mainly women with children, to temporarily leave Ukraine and finding a safer place. And we're really grateful to Canada for launching the special program, Canada-Ukraine Emergency Travel Program, which expires in 15th of July, to help those Ukrainians to find a safer place. And we are really grateful for that support that the Ukrainians who are coming to Canada are getting, including the healthcare, including the financial support, but also including many other activities where I would like to thank Canadians, Canadian people who opened the door, who helped families to accommodate, to find the job, to find the school, to open their houses, and just to host Ukrainian families. This is incredibly impressive, and I would like to thank you. And of course, we have now millions of people displaced. The biggest figures of those who are outside Ukraine now is Poland and Germany, hosting each over the million of Ukrainian temporarily displaced people. For many of them, Canada is actually treated in Ukraine. It's more like a good country. It's kind of a very close neighbor and a friend. So moving to Canada is moving to good friends where they welcome you and help you to go through this hard time. So thank you for that.
Super.
And I believe that it will increase this enormous collaboration between our people.
Certainly, and we are happy to welcome people who are seeking refuge. And this speaks to the Canadian tradition, a tradition that we honor and value. And you know that we, during COVID, resettled more refugees than any other country, including America. So we're happy to help. I want to pivot a moment and speak about what the Chinese ambassador said in relation to Baltic states. And in particular, he said that Crimea is Russia, and our country's borders have, and these borders have no legal basis. Do you want to comment on that?
Ukraine is a member of United Nations, and the independence of Ukraine in 1991 was recognized many countries, and I'm grateful Canada being among the first to recognize Ukrainian independence. And Ukrainian independence and the sovereign country means all Ukrainian borders, including Crimea. And if coming back to Crimea, the situation there, which is happening both with our indigenous people in Crimea, which are Crimean Tatars, who are now under the immense pressure of Russian regime, Many of them are imprisoned. A lot of them are under prosecution and are put to jail. So Russia for many years was trying to bring this message that because of people in Crimea who were also speaking Russian language, were trying to put it as a Russian population. But that's not. And that's not the case now, because the people who are now fighting on the front line are speaking over tens of different languages, including the International Legion and volunteers. And Crimea is Ukraine, and Crimea will be Ukraine.
And I want to underscore what you said, that these borders are internationally recognized, and any world leaders that question that those statements are erroneous. Thank you.
We now go to Mr. Brunel Duceppe. You have.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for being here, Ambassador. You see the extent to which all parliamentarians from all parties here in the House support you, and that's the least we can do. I have a few questions about what you said in your opening remarks, particularly with respect to the electric grid. We saw in La Presse on February the 17th last that Hydro-Quebec had contacted the embassy to help Ukraine with its electric grid. It would send teams there. Do you know if any of these teams have been sent there? What exactly has happened with this offer?
Thank you. As Russia started in the winter just precisely targeting all the critical infrastructure, the losses are now over $11 billion. And we are very grateful to Quebec Hydro and other energy companies in Canada, but Quebec Hydro was the first to contact and to respond to help with the equipment. Mostly it's transformers, like cable for the grids and the different other equipment that it's not so easy to produce, so we in Ukraine were trying to find everything that can be, even the used equipment that can be deployed and helped. And the team of Quebec Hydro, we appreciate their efforts to help and to provide with the list of the needed equipment. We are now working on that file and finalizing about this equipment that can fit, because unfortunately we had a bit of different energy systems and energy requirements in terms of the technology, but having an opportunity, I would like to thank Quebec Hydro, Manitoba Hydro, and the other companies who were the first to come and offer the support.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. There has been much questioning about China. And in fact, my colleague referred to it. It's been part of the Canadian news in terms of the conflict in Ukraine. To what extent do you think that China is trying to influence the conflict? Is it trying to interact with Russia to affect some sort of influence?
Thank you for the question. And what Ukraine offered to every country, including the first time when President Zelensky talked about the peace formula, it was the G20 summit, and then it was the UN Assembly who made the resolution. Ukraine offered the peace plan, which actually is based on the international rules and order. And this is the basic what Ukraine offered to all of the countries to work on. And Ukraine is open to many of the countries to join working together on this peace plan. And so we are open and encouraged, and we are grateful for Canada for supporting the efforts of the points of this peace plan in many other countries across. And I would say that Ukraine wants a very stable but also very fair peace. So all of those negotiations that could come on the different platform need to stick to the basic principles: respect of the sovereign country, respect of the sovereign borders, justice, because without the justice we cannot be assured that it cannot repeat again. It needs to go without food security, because food security is not only the issue with Ukraine, but it's also the global issue, and we have already faced. And what's now happening with the grain initiative, that is another time at risk. Nuclear security, which is important for everybody. Then it is ecocide countering, because that is also happening in Ukraine. So Ukraine set the important milestones on how we feel we are understanding what's that need to be restored. And that is the platform open for discussion, but precisely based on this recognized principle of UN Charter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Giuseppe, you have 4 seconds remaining.
Merci beaucoup, Madame l'ambassadrice.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador.
P. McPherson, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's very nice to see you again. Thank you very much for being here, Ambassador, and sharing this update with us. Obviously, we all wish that was not necessary, and that the Ukrainian people had won the war already and were able to continue on with their lives. I also want to thank you for helping me arrange some meetings when I was in Ukraine earlier this year. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit. So as you know, I was able to visit Irpin and see some of the really horrific devastation that has been done to very clear civilian infrastructure. You know, the destruction of a playground is something I will never, ever forget in my entire life. The violence that has been done to civilians is such a clear indication of war crimes, such a clear indication of genocide. But one of the things that I also saw in Kyiv, and we talked about this, is that Ukrainians are living their lives, that they are continuing to be strong in the face of what Russia is doing. And when I spoke to the first Vice Minister of Ukraine, she mentioned the idea that Ukraine is trying to rebuild. They are trying to rebuild these communities, and that one of the ways that Canada can help is by helping to provide insurance to Canadian companies that are in fact interested in working in Ukraine, but perhaps can't take on that risk. Can you talk about the ways that Canada could help Ukraine rebuild at this time?
Thank you. Thank you for visiting Ukraine, having the opportunity to see all this horror that the war brought, and also the damage that the war brought. Just a few weeks ago, the World Bank published the assessment of the damages to Ukraine. It now exceeds $411 billion. That is huge. And, of course, Ukraine will need the help of on the path of the rebuilding. And Russian frozen sovereign assets and the assets of Russian oligarchs need to be channeled to finance rebuilding of Ukraine. But also the private sector. Private sector with their technology, with their capacity, need to help the rebuilding of Ukraine. And we had our Prime Minister visit to Canada 2 weeks ago, and we were talking with the private sector about involvement in the rebuilding, because rebuilding is already happening. Rebuilding happens next 2 hours after missile hit, for example, the power grids, because we need to restore them. We have no time to wait until the war ends. We need to rebuild schools. We need to rebuild them in that way that the children can go underground when there is the air raid, and they can continue their classes. We need to rebuild schools, hospitals, and all of the other infrastructure, including the over 35,000 of the housing that were completely destroyed. And for the private sector to enter, the war risk insurance is a crucial one and important. And we've started to work with the institutions like World Bank, MIGA, but also with the export credit agencies throughout G7 countries and abroad, to find this instrument to secure the so-called war risks for the private sector, so they can have more clarity and more insurance on entering in Ukraine. And also, I would like to mention one example how during the wartime, Canadian private sector is stepping in a strategic partnership with Ukraine, which is the agreement that was signed also witnessing with our Prime Minister here in Canada, with Canadian, one of the biggest company who produces uranium, and that will be supplied to produce the fuel and to replace Russian nuclear fuel to all of the nuclear power stations in Ukraine. And this is the example where we are building the strategic partnership between our companies and the others from the private sector. And it was widely mentioned during the meeting with the Prime Minister and the private sector. They want to see these supporting instruments for them to de-risk their activities in Ukraine.
Thank you. And I guess really quickly, I don't have very much time left, but one of the other groups that I met with was the Solomon Cats, which was a group of young people who are doing incredible work to support their communities, but also incredible work to demine, because we can't ask populations to come back to rebuild Ukraine without demining efforts being taken. Unfortunately, these are these are teenagers, the early 20s, that are doing this demining work without the supplies they need, without the best material to do that very, very dangerous work. I have an 18-year-old, so for me it was shocking to see what they are having to do this demining with. Is that another way that Canada can help, is by providing some of the supports for demining?
Thank you. Demining is a great issue. It's both for the safety of all of the civilian population, because those territories which we liberated, unfortunately, to bring them back to life, we need to deeply work in the demining. But also, the big thing is the demining of the agri-fields. Unfortunately, we have over 100 cases when the farmers died on the mines on the field. And unfortunately, there is also a part of the territory of Ukraine which this year will not have any harvest because of the mines. And we are really grateful for Canadian government for the response of Ukrainian call on the demining file, providing equipment. But we need much more, and we will be grateful for that.
Thank you very much. We now go to the second round of questioning. We start off with MP Epp, and you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for returning. You mentioned one of your earlier comments, the closeness that we share as nations, our relationship. That is not only between countries. For many of us, that is For many of us, that is also personal, as we have heritage from Ukraine. All 4 of my grandparents were born there. You also mentioned the energy security, and we were just talking about agriculture. And so my own roots come from the farming fields of Ukraine. My grandparents are there. Can you talk about, in your opening comments, you talked about the grain exports in that program. Can you talk about the status of that? We, as a committee, we have a notice of motion on file to look at the global resource challenges that this invasion has brought on, be it in food, be it in fuel and fertilizer. So I hope to get to that study fairly soon. Can you talk about the situation at present? We're going into spring here in Ukraine and in Canada as well. So what does it look like?
Thank you. The situation now is becoming harder because we renegotiated with support of UN and Turkey the extension for the grain corridors from the Black Sea, but unfortunately, with the last few weeks, Russia has been manipulating and taking too much time to checking the ships. So it delays significantly export. It decreased the volumes that we are exporting by this artificial delays on any of the checks, or they can choose and pick up the ship what they want and check, but not those who are in line and committed. And of course, like that creates another risk about the export facilities, because the seaports remain the biggest routes of the export from Ukraine. The second thing is the demining. It's a big issue for us to be able to go to the season and then to predict normal, as it could be in the circumstances, harvest. But also it's the situation with the small farmers. Because for small farmers, it's becoming harder and harder to get financing when they start the planting season, to get proper fertilizers, to get even sometimes diesel. So these all, especially when it comes to small and medium farmers, this will be even harder than the previous year.
I look forward to the opportunity of exploring where Canada can help with those situations and also help perhaps some of the areas where Ukraine has been such a breadbasket in exporting food to, areas of the global south. Switching a bit tangentially here, the Wagner Group obviously has been so active in Ukraine and in parts of the global south. This group has passed a motion unanimously calling for the Wagner Group to be declared as a terrorist organization. We have that recommendation in a report, and the House of Commons has unanimously passed that. Our government has not yet followed through. What would be the impact of a national statement by this government on declaring the Wagner Group as a terrorist group?
We believe Wagner Group is a terrorist group. And not only because they are committing these horrific crimes in Ukraine, including these videos sharing when they cut the head of the Ukrainian soldiers and do all the tortures, but also their impact on the global south. And it is far-reaching. What we all witnessed, that the food insecurity is the big risk, not only for all of us, but especially for those low and mid-income countries in the global south. In order to address, we launched the joint initiative which was called Grain from Ukraine. With the support of Canada and with the support of 10 other countries, we were able to deliver 170,000 tons of Ukrainian grain to those countries who are most in need. But there is needed much more. But in terms of the Wagner Group, we do believe that they are the terrorist organization and they need to be treated that in a proper legal way that can be implemented because it's spreading violence, not only in Ukraine, but it's spreading violence in the global south, the region that is a partner for us and is important for us.
Thank you. We now go to MP Ben-Dayan. You have 4 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Your Excellency, thank you for returning to our committee. It is always a pleasure to gain your perspective, and of course, thank you as well for all of the work that you are doing here in Canada and in Ukraine. I have only a short amount of time. I'd like to pick up on some of your opening comments with respect to sanctions. You mentioned the impact of sanctions has been significant. I believe the figure that you cited was that $58 billion has been blocked from Russia. One particular area that has gained some attention is around sanctions on fertilizer. As you know, Canada imposed a 35% tariff on Russian fertilizer at the very beginning of the Russian invasion, and Fortunately, the Conservative Party put forward a motion in the House of Commons to remove those sanctions on fertilizer. Our government has preferred to stand up to Russia, to keep those sanctions in place, and to support farmers by investing in them to help diversify away from Russian sanctions. I'd like to hear your view about the importance of those sanctions on Russian fertilizer, but also what you're hearing from other allies, including perhaps in the global south, about the possibility of other countries imposing similar sanctions.
Thank you. Sanctions are really important, and it is important for them to be as well timely and to be continued, because each dollar that Russia was benefiting, if we look backwards last year and even the year before the war, Russia benefited from the high energy prices and was able, both in 2021 and 2022, get record in their revenues for exporting oil and gas. And the decision to impose the price cap was implemented in December. Since then, we see a significant decrease in Russian revenues, export revenues, and it continues. We also see the significant lack of technology and lack of access of technology. Sometimes Russians are, through the third parties, importing washing machines in order just to get the small chip to be able to produce weapons. So it is important to work on the sanctions circumventions and to deprive Russia, because otherwise, on the one side, we are imposing sanctions, but if we are not closing these loopholes where Russia is circumventing them, we are ourselves decreasing the impact of the sanctions. And actually, a big part of fertilizers is the same gas, because for many of the fertilizers, just 70% of their cost is just the natural gas. So without sanctioning them, it's just the same energy, but with the different name. So we need to be consistent in approaching the sanctions.
Thank you, Your Excellency. With the short amount of time I have left, I would like to give you an opportunity to advise our committee as to what additional, defense materials that Ukraine may need. Of course, our Leopards have arrived, and you articulated very well the extent of Canadian support in providing artillery and other defense equipment to Ukraine. Perhaps I could just also mention it's very important to the Jewish community that I represent in Outremont that over the course of Passover, everybody in our community enjoyed Ukrainian matzah, and that you mentioned that Ukraine continues to produce grain. That is something that the Jewish community here in Canada feels is incredibly important to support and has celebrated with. So I wanted to let you know. Perhaps I could turn it over to you on the defense
If you could just respond
question.
very briefly, please.
So, armored vehicles, artillery shells, air defense. This is the crucial needs, and continued training. But there is one more need. We are all approaching the Vilnius NATO summit, and we will count on Canada's support for Ukraine on our way to NATO. And Ukraine believes that it's not only for Ukraine important to be a NATO member, but also for NATO, Ukraine's membership will increase significantly the security and capability of the alliance.
Thank you. We now go to Monsieur Brunel Duceppe. Vous avez 2 minutes.
2 minutes, Mr. Brunel Duceppe. Well, you mentioned, Madam Ambassador, sanctions. In your opinion, do the present sanctions suffice? Are there enough sanctions? Should there be more sanctions? I only have 2 minutes, but please go ahead.
There is another sector that still is not under the sanctions, which is the Russian nuclear sector. And not only because Russia is using nuclear threats, it's putting at risk the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe, Zaporizhzhia, and just it's permanently under the risk of shelling attacks and under the horrific consequences. But also Russia is trying to use its nuclear sector to circumvent the sanctions. So this is another big thing that we need to all together work, and Ukraine has already imposed the sanctions. Ukraine has went through using of Russian nuclear fuel, so we moved to now probably Canadian company that will be owned by Canadian funds and Canadian companies, company Westinghouse, who is supplying all the nuclear fuel to Ukraine. But also important, I would just mention 2 things. Working with sanctions circumventions, including specifically on the technology, microchips, and everything that could be used as a part of producing weapons. And the third thing is working with the frozen assets, because these are the assets that need to serve for rebuilding of Ukraine. And we are very grateful for the support of the legislation that provide the opportunity to seize these assets. And we will be grateful to see these first cases.
Est-ce que rapidement, est-ce qu'il y a des...
Very quickly.
Giuseppe, sorry. We next go to MP McPherson. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those of us in the smaller parties, it's always a bit of a challenge as we try to squeeze a few more seconds out. Ambassador, I just wanted to let you know that this committee is undertaking a study on the sanctions regime, so we will be looking at that, and we may even ask for your expertise at that time. And I think from your perspective, I can see that there is some work to be done around the sanctions. I certainly am a little concerned about the enforcement of our sanction regime that we have and some of the transparency. I'd love an update from you on just a couple things, though. First of all, we have heard a lot about the children being stolen by Russia and taken to Russia, stolen from Ukraine and taken to Russia. We've also heard a lot about the sexual violence and the rape as a weapon of war being used in this conflict. If you could very quickly touch on any update you have on both of those topics.
Thank you. I think now it's all obvious that the forceful deportation of Ukrainian children, it's not only the thing what we have been talking. Now we have the global arrest warrant for Putin and so-called Russian ombudsman for children for illegal deportation and illegal abduction of Ukrainian children. Unfortunately, there are over 19,000 of Ukrainian children who were forcefully deported. The horror is many of them have parents in Ukraine or grandparents from Ukraine. And there was a horrific story just 3 weeks ago when grandmother went to Russia to take her child back and she died there. So these are the stories that are happening. These children are brought throughout all of the country. Unfortunately, we're trying to get as much information and track as much as possible to know where our children are, to bring them back. But we only managed to bring 328 of them. And this is the horror what many mothers and fathers and relatives who so it's not only orphans, but every child matters for us. And this is the crime, this is the war crime what ICC is investigating. So the support for ICC in this, it is important, as it is important to work with us to find the ways of how we can bring these children back. On the sexual violence, there are also the many criminal cases we are investigating, but also one thing that we will need the support, and especially having this big capability in Canada, was the mental health. Because a lot of people, including those who went through the sexual crimes, they need to have a proper treatment. And we as Ukraine are seeking to get the best knowledge, best experience, best protocols on how we can help the people, both women who went through the sexual crimes, but also many other who went through the horror of the war, to get better through the mental health.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the last round, we go to MP Jenis. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. My colleague across the way did decidedly misstate the Conservative position on sanctions. We have been consistent in pushing for tougher sanctions, but I'm limited time, so I won't say more than that. Your Excellency, I wanted to ask you 2 questions about the church in Ukraine. First of all, the Orthodox Christian community celebrated Easter last Sunday, and precisely at that time, Russian invaders destroyed a number of churches in the Zaporizhia region. Are the Russian invaders intentionally targeted churches or other religious infrastructure, and are there instances beyond the ones I've mentioned where you see this happening?
Thank you for the question. So, yes, Russia is targeting both churches, both historical, cultural places, libraries. So we have over 300 of both the religious places, the historical and cultural places that have been either significantly targeted or destroyed. It was an Easter. It was when people were going to churches, as we have a tradition in Ukraine to bringing bread and Easter eggs. Russia was still launching missile attacks on those civilian objects because there are no soldiers in the church. The people went there to pray with the hope for the victory, with the hope for their sons and daughters who are on the front line. So, yes, and if it comes for the occupied regions, they are even looting and burning Ukrainian books from the Ukrainian libraries. They published the new books on history in Russia, where just from history of Kiev Rus, they are totally erasing Kiev as the center of Kiev Rus.
Thank you. And I want to just get one more question in, just also on the church issue. I know there's legitimate recognition of the negative role of the Moscow Patriarchate and its support for the war. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church, under the ecclesial jurisdiction of the Moscow Patriarchate, has sought to distinguish himself. And I know this is a complex and sensitive issue. I wonder if you can share any comments on the relationship between the Ukrainian government and this particular church, and about how to strike the balance between preserving religious freedom while also addressing instances of churches being used and misused for hostile military purposes.
Thank you for this question, and I think it's quite obvious. Ukraine, as a country, respects all the religions. We have different religions inside the country. Yes, Christianity is the majority, but Ukraine never had any issues with respect for any of the religious beliefs of our citizens, the people who live in Ukraine. But also in the wartime, it's a matter of not the church and religion, but the individuals who could be and are investigated on their activities against Ukraine, its sovereignty and territorial integrity. That's it.
Thank you for that response. Do I have time for more?
Nope,
No, I
I'm
didn't think
afraid
so.
not.
Thanks.
For the last question, we go to MP Sarai. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thanks for coming again and letting us know how the situation is there. Can you enlighten us on the strength of the European Union members and their commitment, and as well as others that surround Ukraine? Is it still as strong as it has been and as we've seen, or is there any places where it's wavering? And the reason I ask is then we can help perhaps apply pressure to those states that might be wavering or not giving as much support as you would hope.
Thank you for this question. And I think the Russian invasion makes exactly the opposite that Russia was trying to achieve. The Europe is more united. Ukraine is now officially having the status of the candidate to EU membership. And I would say on a speedy way doing our homework to meet those standards, those requirements to be an EU member. The same we will do for the NATO. It brings the dialogue between EU and Ukraine on a totally different level. So, for example, in February, we had Ukraine-EU summit, which was in Kyiv, as most of the commissioners were coming to Ukraine, also seeing on the ground, understanding both the needs for Ukraine to defend themselves, because we all are defending the security of Europe. But also a lot of things are happening in our integration, whether it's the digital infrastructure, whether it's logistics, whether it's the industry, where it's the standard. So on our path as now officially the candidate to EU membership, we're even more closer cooperating between both the EU countries and European Union as the Union on our path to EU. That brings a lot of collaboration, a lot of joint groups on proceeding quickly on this integration. And I would also like to say that Ukraine has the EU as a part of our bigger reform agenda, because Ukraine is not stopping doing our homework during the war. Historically, first time the country who is in an active fight for itself, Ukraine had the 4-year program with International Monetary Fund, which on the one side provide the funding to Ukraine, on the other side it's a path of structural reforms, and the government is committed and is doing this. So that brought the unity. Of course, there are some issues that could happen from time to time that the countries among European Union and Ukraine are discussing, but that's totally a different feeling of cooperation we have.
Thank you very much. That concludes questioning. At this point, Madam Ambassador, allow me to thank you once again. I think it would be fair to say that We have had the committee of, we've had the great honor of benefiting from your insights and your perspective and expertise more than any other ambassador in the city of Ottawa. So thank you for always making yourself available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, it is an honor, so we were wondering if we could take a picture with you. Thank you. Now, did you have something to say, Rachel?
Mr. Chair, just in order to clarify, I believe my colleague, Mr. Jennis, indicated that I misstated the Conservative position, and I would refer him to the vote of June 7th, 2022.
Thank you. So prior to adjourning the meeting, just very quickly, the subcommittee met a couple of days ago. We agreed to adopt the calendar to the end of May. Just wanted to make sure that there is unanimous consent for that. Yes, thank you. So it has been sent around this morning by the clerk. Our next meeting will be Thursday from 11 to 1, and we will return to consideration of clause by clause for Bill C-281. Is it the will of the committee to adjourn? Thanks.